Let's talk some waiver wire, shall we, as we get closer to Tuesday when everybody's going to be putting in their claims. Not necessarily a special week out there on the waiver wire, but there are some names that are of interest. Let's take a look at some of the guys who will be the top waiver wire targets this week. At the quarterback spot, Teddy Bridgewater, Andy Dalton, both of them have pretty favorable matchups heading into week 7. Boston Scott, a name you should keep an eye on. Miles Sanders suffered a knee injury in Sunday's game, and with a short week, a very good chance that he will not be available for the Eagles come Thursday night when they take on the Giants. So Boston Scott's going to be a very popular name if this knee injury turns out to be something serious for Miles Sanders. Your wide receivers, Chase Claypool, still available in a surprising number of NFL.com leagues. Keelan Cole, who played very well the last couple of weeks for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Fulgam, who is legit, it looks like, in Philadelphia. T. Higgins is still out there as well at the wide receiver spot. And a couple of tight ends, Trey Burton, Irv Smith Jr. Keep in mind, both of those guys, the Colts and the Vikings, are on buys this week. So if you are going after them, it's because you have some depth. You're just looking to make an ad and you're maybe stashing them for a little bit later on in the season. Just know, if you get Burton or Smith, they will not be available to you in week 7. But let's talk a little bit about Travis Fulgham, Kimmy, because the last 3 weeks actually, he has played very well for the Eagles. They have been hurting at wide receiver with no Alshon Jeffrey, no Desean Jackson, and Fulgham, a touchdown in 3 straight games. He's had over 100 yards in a couple of these games. Are you buying into Travis Fulgham right now in the Eagles offense?
I feel like I'm fully buying in because even last week, he was another name that was still on the waiver wire. And we're like, the guy's good. He has a pair of touchdowns. Is this just smoke and mirrors? And I think he went out and proved that absolutely not. He had 31 fantasy points in week 5. And then yesterday, as you can see, he finished with 19.5 fantasy points. And again, another touchdown on the board. Now, he led the team in receptions and receiving yards while he shared the lead in targets, tying with Zach Ertz. Now, the only worry that I do have is that, yes, he has been good, but that's because Desean Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey and Jalen Reagor have not been playing and they've been banged up. But they could all return as early as week 7. And that's the only kind of concern I have of what does that look like for Fulgham? And is that going to completely limit his role in the passing attack? So that's just one thing that I'm a little bit worried about. But regardless, he's gone out. Please, if you're my English teacher and listening to this, I'm so sorry for that one. But Travis Fulgham has gone out and really proved that he deserves to be a starting wide receiver and have continual production.
I understand the concerns about what happens when Alshon and Desean get back. I wonder, though, whether or not the Eagles have looked around and said that this guy deserves more of an opportunity. Certainly, just reading the tea leaves and sort of following along with some of the beat writers in Philadelphia, the feeling is that Fulgham is legit, that he is here to stay, and that there is some talk that he might get some more reps even when those veterans get back and get healthy. Yeah, it seems like he has earned it. And right now, I would also just kind of throw in the track record of guys like Alshon Jeffrey and Desean Jackson when it comes to their health, just knowing that the last couple of years they really have struggled to stay on the field. And so that, if anything else, might be worth picking up and stashing Fulgham, knowing that even when those guys come back, who knows how long they will be back before Fulgham gets back on the field again. But he's certainly played well enough to establish himself and to prove that he deserves more of an opportunity there. Keelan Cole down in Jacksonville, surprisingly, has outscored DJ Chark when it comes to fantasy. Chark was the guy that we all loved. Right now, he's the wide receiver 30. Keelan Cole is the wide receiver 20. So is it about time that maybe we shift our focus to a different guy in that Jacksonville receiving group?
This is exciting because Kelan Cole officially outscored DJ Chark, and then he out-targeted the rookie Laviska Shenault. So yes, I think we should shift our focus just a little bit and realize that, very much like you were just saying about Travis Fulgham, that Kelan Cole could be a guy who we need to focus on, who could be fantasy relevant. He had 6 receptions, 143 yards, just over 20 fantasy points. Now, I think that this means good things for Kelan Cole, but I also think that this this immediately boosts the stock and means even better things for Gardner Minshew because it opens up that passing game attack for him to have receivers who he can get the ball to. Now put in James Robinson, who, yes, he's a running back, but he's also involved in the passing game. This Jacksonville's Jaguar offense continues to be really exciting and fun to watch and also really fun to root for. So Keelan Cole, if you're a fantasy manager who was lucky enough to snag him or smart enough to start him and realize he's the real deal, you should feel really happy about that. And I could see some people going out and looking to make a trade for him and get him on their squad.
I think this is a week where Keelan Cole is going to come into play for a lot of fantasy managers when you look at the teams that are going to be on bye this week, right? You got the Vikings that are going to be out, which means no Adam Thielen or Justin Jefferson. You don't have the Dolphins, so no Devontae Parker or Preston Williams. The Colts, I don't think we're starting a lot of Colts wide receivers right now, so maybe that's not quite as imperative. The Ravens are out, so maybe no Marquise Brown this week for you. So you could be out there looking potentially for wide receivers. Keelan Cole is going to be a nice option, and he has been a surprise. I mean, we all sort of thought it was going to be DJ Chark that led the way. Laviska Shenault has been a nice piece, although maybe sort of inconsistent when it comes to his week-to-week production. Keelan Cole has stepped up and played well and sort of filled the void. And right now, he is a top 20 fantasy receiver, which means that he certainly deserves at least a little bit of your attention. So if you are on the waiver wire this week, Kimmy, which of these guys are you making your top priority?
So my top priority is going to still be Andy Dalton. I think I said that last week as well, just because I think the quarterback position for me is something that I'm really weak on. Now, before, if you would have asked me last season, I was the person who was dumb and went out in the first round and wanted to get Patrick Mahomes and only Patrick Mahomes. And then I spent all of my draft capital. Now I've kind of eased up a little bit and I have two streaming quarterbacks that I kind of go in between week by week. I think Andy Dalton, I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do tonight against the Arizona Cardinals because he still does have that strong receiving core. So yes, Andy Dalton is going to be my number one waiver priority. But also because of this news of Miles Sanders being injured and us still a little unsure of what that timeline looks like for that injury, the guy you mentioned earlier, Boston Scott, is someone who is officially on my radar and I may look to snag.
I do think Boston Scott's going to be maybe the most popular name on the waiver wire this week, especially if we get more news about Miles Sanders in that knee injury. Running backs are just so hard to find. Look, there's a reason that everybody went rushing for Alexander Mattison last week, although that didn't work out so great. Four points out of Alexander Mattison against the Falcons is not what we had planned, but it just goes to show Dalvin Cook went down. Everybody went out to try to get the running back because we thought he was going to get a huge workload. Same thing will be in play with Boston Scott. If there is no Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, you can expect will get quite a bit of work in that Philadelphia offense. I mean, is there anybody else potentially that I didn't list here that you think is worth a shot, or did we kind of cover the list of waiver wire targets for the week?
You know, I think we did cover the list of targets this week, so no one else that I'm really targeting. It gets really hard when it's this point in the season, because especially with teams out on a bye, even if there's a guy out there that you think may have a potential of someone to go grab and pick up, like earlier you're talking about Irv Smith Jr. and Trey Burton. Yes, you can go grab them, but they're not going to be able to do anything for you for at least a few weeks because of those buys. So this is where it gets really tricky, and that's why it is so imperative that you do pay attention to the waiver wire earlier on in the season rather than doing a last-minute scramble like I do every single year.
I know that there are people out there who certainly have studied this sort of thing a lot more in depth than I have, but I think the general consensus is if you're going to find a waiver wire stud to carry you through the season, it's probably going to happen within the first 2 or 3 weeks. At this point in the year, barring some major injury somewhere, at this point in the year, you are probably playing the waiver wire just to find some stopgap options, some kind of bridge players to get you through until your guy gets healthy or gets off of bye or what have you. So again, Boston Scott's going to be popular, but Boston Scott's long-term value probably isn't that great unless Miles Sanders' injury turns out to be way more serious than we know about right now.